Hello, my friends. We have been doing a lot of streaming lately, and a question that comes up fairly frequently, which is totally fine, is, hey, I have this person, but I don't have this particular support or this particular, character. What team should I build for this DPS that I have? And I put it to the chat and asked people if they wanted me to make a video about this, and there was a lot of positive responses. And so here I am. I'm going to do my best to try to give you a video that's kind of like a priority system where it's like, hey, if I have this and this person, it's kind of best in slot. If I don't have this person, I go down the list and kind of keep going until I run out of options. Now, this is entirely going to be dependent on what you have pulled. And there's no way for me to look at your accounts for every one of you and say, hey, you should do this, you should do that. I'm debating trying to do some sort of account reviews on a podcast that Per Platypus and I are doing. Him and I have to talk about. There's a lot of mechanics to try to make that work. But this will hopefully, for these initial batch characters for 1.0, give you some ideas on how to run your teams. Now, this is not a, if you do it this way, you're right, and if you don't do it this way, you are wrong. I don't want you to think about that way in this game. You're going to hear me joking and maybe trash Makoto a little bit. Or not Makoto, Tomoko a bit. And the fact of the matter is she's being used in the SOS trials in Content 1.0 to push high scores. So you can make things work for sure. And there's going to be situations where just about every character can be viable, if not every character can be viable. So please enjoy those that you pull. Don't think you have to re-roll just because you didn't pull Rin or you didn't pull Joker or you didn't pull, I don't know, Leon or something like that. This is going to help you say, I have these people, here's what I do. I do need to apologize. I realize I wore a camouflage shirt, so hopefully you can see me. Sorry, dad jokes. But let's get started. Please like and sub on your way in, and thank you to the members that have joined the channel. Saw quite a few of you in stream, and that response has been insane to me, so thank you so much. So unfortunately, I can't show you too much of this in game. It's hard to build tier lists, and I want to show you too. I do not have everybody, and not only do I not have everybody, I am missing some people that are key. So probably two of the most recommended in my builds are Rin for the sake of Joker and our good friend Leo here. I used to call him Leon, by the way, just because of KR. So if you hear me say Leon, I really mean Leo. He's our resident Power Ranger, Featherman kind of looking guy. Love this character. I don't have him. So, even for myself, I have to go through this tier list. And if you watch me, play on stream, you'll notice that I have the, quote unquote suboptimal teams, but I'm still doing all the content. So early game, if you just want to throw people together and have some fun, you can avoid this entire video and go enjoy yourself. I will do my best to put some timestamps in the bottom if I'm talking about specific characters. And the other thing I want to tell you is this is not a let me define the build of every single character and talk about all their powers. I have some build guides for that. Other creators do as well. And so it's going to be a more general, kind of hitting the highlights as to why, certain characters work well together, but I'm not going to deep dive every single power for all of the however many people we have. So let me switch my screens over here. I need to show this in this kind of tier list builder format. And sorry for all the ads that run around it. It's not like a sponsored content thing. It's just the webpage it's on. So what I've done is I've put all the characters that you currently have access to in the game. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. Oh, I did miss somebody. Oh, my bad. That was embarrassing. I did miss Riddle. And I think people are going to joke if they've seen me in stream talking about her. But in here, I've tried to break it out by roles because what you want to understand about this game is roles and synergies. And I cover a bit about this in my team building guide. This is kind of like a continuation of that, if you will. So first of all, the navigator slot, you're only going to have two options. And this is the simplest slot for you to sit back and say, make a decision. Okian, which is this, kind of party chick looking girl, she is your offensive navigator. So she is going to bring more power to your team. It's going to let you, demolish things faster. When you're running just broad content, running through palaces, mementos, she's usually your go-to. And then Puppet is two things. One, she is your sustainer. She gives you shields. She can give you some attack buffs if you have enough. I think they call it seashells before you use skill 3. But really, you're bringing her to keep you alive. She's great when you're bossing, if you're going into hard content, or, if you're, say, pushing mementos, and like I did it last night, and I was, level 30, and I was fighting like a 38 Matador. And so, I bring her to give me that extra safety net so I can take a couple extra hits. But it's basically, do you want more offense or do you need defense? The other place that Puppet's good is in the not too distant future with Fox. Fox scales off defense, so she is effectively an offensive navigator specifically for Fox. He's not here now, but just kind of giving you a little preview of someone to come. Then you have your buff slots, and your buff slot is really like, how do I juice up my DPS? So you've got Leo. He is my favorite buffer. I'm kind of putting this in order, by the way, except for the navigator slot. So he's my favorite buffer. He's easy to slot in. He gives you a shield when he decreases your health to increase your attack effectively. Kind of, I'm oversimplifying a little bit here. And if you have his 5-star weapon, he also will give you additional crit damage. And so Leo is just an easy one. You hit a button, people get buffs. Riddle, I give a lot of flack to Riddle and Tomoko. It's not that you shouldn't build them. It's not that they're terrible. Nothing of that sort. It's just that by comparison, Leo is just easier to use and tends to do more for your teams, in my opinion. Now, Tomoko's being used in SOS right now, if you look at the leaderboards. So that's proof positive that you can use them and get a lot of mileage out of them. Riddle, I would say even right now, I would use if I had her, just in this kind of, up to level 50 range, because you just don't have a ton of options. The thing with her is you have to build up this, I forget what they call it, but like childlike stacks or something like that to get the most out of her. And again, it's not that you can just press, skill 1 or skill 3 and she's just instantly giving you all these great buffs. You have a little bit more thought you have to put into it. And then Tomoko, my issue with her is simply that she works off, I want to say it's sleep. And a lot of bosses will resist the very thing that she's doing. So, when you have less freedom to use them in the harder content, when you want to use them the most, that tends to be a negative in my opinion. But again, people are using her to get top ranking scores right now. So she has her place. And if anything, I would say this content cycle is when these two are the most useful, before we get like the chords of the game. Then you have your debuffers. Your debuffers are just, the opposite side of this coin where they're buffing your characters. These are generally speaking debuffing the enemy. Not to say they can't give buffs, and I'll show you some synergies here in a little bit. And I wouldn't say that this is better than that one. I think these two are very specific to team building. You have your tanks. Soy, we're all going to get him. Soy is fantastic, and he also provides defense debuffs, which are great. You can get a little bit of buffing going on with our other individual here, but I think of the two, generally speaking, you're going to get more mileage out of Soy. And let me grab the other one's name because I am spacing it at the moment here. Let's see, it is Yukimi. So for Yukimi, she is another one to keep an eye on if you plan to pull Fox. So she does a lot of great things that would specifically be good for him. So her and Puppet are actually great for a Fox team. So again, you've got your uses. And then your sustain, this is your healer slot. I probably should have called this healer. Everyone gets cattle, you start with him. He is fine if you don't pull Morgana. Morgana is more of your, hey, it's a wind mono team or a team that wants the windswept status and off-turn healing. So neither of them are bad, but you don't have to feel pressure from Morgana. And that's kind of your roles. Everyone else is DPS, not DPA. And it's a stable of different people. They all have different elements. And so, well, except for there's one shared element with Curse. But effectively, when you go into a weak combat situation, like someone who's weak to fire, like you would look to bring it on. If you go in weak to electric, you might look to bring a closer. So you've got curse, fire, electric, wind, physical, ice, and then single target curse. So you've got AoE and single target. So they give you a breadth of different damage types. Now it's hard to try to build every single character right now and, max them out. It would take a lot of resources. So you might want to make some decisions. But at the end of the day, you're not bringing on to fire null fights. I did that on accident. I wasn't paying attention. And I was like, oh, she's not doing any damage. Like, obviously a bad choice. So, these are the roles that you have. And so when I build a team, I think of a couple things. So let's start with the Joker team because this is our first limited character. A lot of you are pulling from. By the way, if you don't want to, he is not needed. He is great in this content cycle and for a little while to come. But, if you don't like Joker, you don't like Joker. Don't feel pressured. And so Joker, whether you've seen my guide or not, if I was going to build for him, I would look at what is the first thing of synergy. Is there a character that specifically synergizes with Joker? And the answer in this question is yes, and it's Rin. So right off the bat, my best team is going to include Rin if I have her. And again, this is all about telling you what to do if you don't have characters as well. And she just synergizes with the curse and with debuffs, and she, decreases defense for enemies. And so I would pull her in. I could also look at, what is my buffer? So for my buffer, Leo is going to be kind of, again, your top pick here. And so now I've built a team. I've got a Joker, I've got a buffer, buffer slash debuffer in the sense that she helps Joker, and a buffer. This is a powerhouse team, and I would use this if I didn't need sustain. And maybe we should talk about that. Not every single fight you need sustain for. But when you do, you're going to sub out one of your slots. And so again, here I've got a Rin, and there's a case that could be made to put Leo in over Rin. He does buff you really well, but I still prefer Rin in this situation. But if I need a sustainer, I can go with Cattle or I can go with Morgana. Now, Cattle doesn't have anything that's naturally synergistic. The fire damage or dot doesn't necessarily do anything for curse damage. Doesn't mean it's bad. You're still getting a fire dot. And you'll see this is the case on every single time that I talk about these two. But I personally like Morgana. One, it's a little bit of bias. I will fully put that on display here. But also, he has that windswept status, and his heals are off turn, which means that as long as the enemy's not wind resistant, I can throw out a damage dealing move, upping my damage a bit, and decrease the defense, and it would stack with Rin's defense debuff, as well as if Runder's popping out like a Raccoonda or something like that. And so I personally like this team, but you're not wrong if you're like, I don't like Morgana and I want Cattle. The main point of this slot, when you need it, is sustain. Who is bringing you the best heals? I think Cattle is easier to do heals with at this stage of the game because it's harder to build crit for Morgana, and Morgana wants to crit. That's where he gets his power from. And so at this level, you're not getting like a bunch of cards and maximizing your crit. So Cattle is more of your set and forget. His heals are going to scale up, and Morgana's not. So, from a Joker build, and I guess this is, starting off with my Joker, I would start with a team that looks like this if I don't need sustain, and I would go into a team that looks like this if I did need sustain. This is my personal optimal team. Again, I'm not going to talk about navigators. You either go offense or defense. Just pick your poison for the fight. Now you say, okay, well, I don't have Rin. What do I do then? So if I don't have Rin, now I'm going to look like this. So I'm going to want to potentially sub her out and hopefully have a buffer. So now it's kind of the antithesis. I'm not debuffing and synergizing with Curse. I'm just coming up with the Leo. And then it's you're just kind of walking down the mix here. If you don't have Leo, this is where you might want to go with a Riddle. If you don't have Riddle, your last option is really Tomoko from a buffing standpoint. Or you can go into like the DPS sub DPS route. So if you have none of these, and so like right now, I have Tomoko. I'm probably not going to use her. I don't have. So I'm missing most of this little bucket up here. Now I might look at something like, okay, well, Soy, I could possibly do as my sustain. And he does like a a defense down debuff. Man, that was hard to say. And then I can look at, well, what else do I have? If I have Flueret, maybe I get that extra windswept status. Or like right now for Palace 1, I'm using Closer because I have to build her. And I know someone told me that you could sub into level 35, but I just built her anyways. And eventually you want to get to level 50 on your characters to get the free gold card. So for standard banner pulls. This is not a terrible team. It's obviously not as optimized as your Rin in that first team. But this is how I would think about approaching it. So let's put these people back to where they belong. And so yeah, Joker, I would go Rin if I had her. Leo second place. Your fully offensive team is Rin and Leo. Sustain, I pick Morgana. Maybe move into a Soy if I don't really need heals. I just want that defense debuff. Okay, so next up are, often talked about DPS is going to be on. And so now that you've kind of seen how I build this, I'm going to, I guess, speed run, if you will, a little bit through these so this video is not 7 hours long. And so on, my favorite team is Go Fire Mono. So for her, she wants enemies burning. You've got Key. Key is going to basically enhance damage for people doing fire damage. And he's going to help her with just making her hit harder and building up her stacks to go into her concentration mode. I actually think it might be called something different in global, but basically where she does more damage. And then Cattle Again, fire, he can apply burn. And so this is your early game fire mono team. You can use this team for a very, very long time. You could use it today if you wanted to. Now you will get like a howler later that could be better, but this is the kind of team that just really synergizes well. And it's based around someone you can pick for free, somebody you're going to get for free, and a 4-star who you're likely to pull eventually. So this is a great team. Now I would say if you don't have Key, so let's put him back up here, you're still always going to have these two. And I don't know, I would probably just keep them. I don't see a big reason not to. And so now I'm just going to move down my list of who do I have to support. And again, and this is going to be a theme you're going to see constantly. My order here is going to be Leo into Riddle into Tomoko. So if I want a buffer and I have Leo, this is my next pick. This is how I'm going to buff up on. If I don't have her, then obviously, like I said, I just go down the list. Or you could look at bringing Soy again. Soy is just a great... He's a tank. He can take some heat off of An. She's a DPS. She's going to be a little bit squishier. And he's got that defense down. So he's never a bad pick, in my opinion. And I would put him over our other friend over here, whose name I keep forgetting. You can also do something creative here. And you might do this in a few different teams where you could put Flueret in and have a second DPS. He's not being synergized with anybody. And really, you know, this isn't always the best thing, but he does add Windswept. And I would pick him over adding Morgana as a second for Windswept, just because now you double sustain. You're not really doing a ton there. But yeah, if you have Key, this is a great team. If you don't have Key, I would really consider a Leo into a Riddle, maybe into a Tomoko in the early game, but I wouldn't push her to level 80 or anything like that. And when you don't have these, you know, go with your Soy. And again, this is a very, you'll hear me repeat this quite a bit. So that's your on team. Getting out of there, you're going to have, you know, Flueret. Flueret, I think a lot of people are going to sleep on him. I don't think you should. Fluret's mechanics work around making sure he has Windswept. And so a natural partner, if you need sustain, is going to be Morgana. Morgana can apply Windswept on skill 1. And, you know, granted, he can also apply it on skill 1. It just gives another chance to get that going for his damage. So you do like that. And again, he's another one where you're going to go through that buff list of Leo into Riddle into Tomoko. He can be a little bit squishy. And so I think another good pairing here is potentially Soy, just to give that tankiness to him. And again, that's if you're in harder content where you might need a little bit more support or sustain. Otherwise, if it's something you can blitz through, I would really consider that Leon combo. All right, so next up, we have one of my favorite characters in Ryuji. Ryuji really does have a best in slot because he wants to have a, you know, threshold of health that he's under, and Leo will do that for you. He'll help you with that with his skill that reduces your health and gives you a shield instead. And then he just buffs the crap out of attack. And if you get his 5-star, he's going to also buff your crit damage, which is really what Ryuji wants. And so this is your best pairing to go together here. And then early game, you actually don't want to throw a sustain in for this team because you don't want him getting healed up. And so another way you can get that sustain is from that kind of more tanky aspect of having someone like Soy and having him, you know, taunt. And then also, again, he does that defense decrease, which you can do from his, I think it's skill 2 is the gun attack, and then his actual just normal one, his normal gun attack. And so he's a great one to then debuff the enemies. And so this is a potentially great team here. Again, if you don't have Leon, you just want to keep your attack buffs going, and so you move down the path. So, you know, I put this in this order for a reason. It's like go here, then here, then here. You could, in a lot of these teams, argue Rin for the defense debuff. Her Forget is more of a, you know, if you're lucky in a proc sort of a thing, you don't really use her skill 2 that often. You tend to alternate skill 1 and skill 3. And so for her, she is somebody, if you have her, you can slot in for a defense debuff. But Ryuji works best when you're buffing his damage. And so that's where, you know, he really will shine for you. And so look for things that are more in the buffing range for him. And then just remember for Ryuji, you don't want to put sustain. There's not going to be a situation where I really say to put these two in there. If you're going for a fight that is so heavy you need a lot of healing, you may not want Ryuji. You want him to rush down a boss and just do massive, massive damage and not put yourself in a position where everybody needs to be healed like every turn or every other turn, because you're just, you know, kind of working into limiting his DPS, or you have to be really good about timing to where you heal him and then you use a Leo to bring his health back down or his skill 1. And you just really have to have your tuning done to be able to do that. It just makes it a little bit harder. So really you're better off running something like this than having a sustain in there. So that's the Ryuji piece. And again, if you want more depth on some of these characters, just look to see if I have a guide for them yet. I already have Joker on Ryuji Morgana guides out as of when I'm recording this. That's Ryuji. He's one of my favorite teams. All right, for this last bucket, I'm going to give you a 2-in-1 and then, follow up with our curse friend here. And so for these two, for Closer and for Mont, you don't really have yet, a lot of like ice synergy or electric synergy. You will when Yui comes out, which should be our next banner. So she actually pairs better with Yui. So keep that in mind. But for these two, it's really pretty straightforward in my opinion. I would do the pretty standard, do you need a sustain? I keep putting Soy in the wrong spot. Do you need a sustain? And if you do, you know what, I'm going to put him there. Pick one of these three. If you need a healer, obviously pick a healer. These two are better healers, I would say, than Soy is. But at the end of the day, he is still phenomenal, and I put him in a lot of teams without a healer. But I would pick one of those. Closer in particular is wicked squishy, and so I do like pairing her with Soy in particular, or at least a healer. She can get targeted down very, very quickly. And so, I would think about a sustain. If you're in content, you don't need a sustain. It's, again, our standard fare. You're getting the pattern here. And that is to go with, your Leo to buff them and then work down the list if you don't have a Leo. And then, debuffers, Soy still fits that role as well. Soy is so versatile. I hope you guys give him a chance because beyond the tanking, a little bit of healing, he's also debuffing the enemy. And that, at this stage of the game, just having somebody that does so many things is so valuable. So don't sleep on Soy and you will get him. So it's not, it's not like someone you have to pull for. You could pull him now, but just look out for him when you get him. And that's really where I would take this team is I would probably do something, like this with Soy and like a Leo. That would be a great team to build with either one of these two DPSs. The other thing you can do is, something like what I'm doing right now without Rin is I throw, people like this in as a sub DPS with, like a Joker, because again, I don't have Leo, I don't have Rin, I don't have Riddle. I'm actually the use case, right? I'm the person who doesn't have these and I have to go down the list until I finally get them one day. But yeah, I think a great team, again, something like this, or you could sub him for a Riddle if you had to Tomoko, but you're not going to see me really recommend her a ton. And, otherwise, if you need a healer, of course, bring them in there with you. And that's going to leave us with our curse friend here. So Sumi is another curse dealer. So he's the one place that we really have this overlap, but he's single target. And he works interestingly. I don't know that I'll do a full guide for him, but basically he builds up, I think they're called sonnet stacks. And you get to a certain point that you're spending them. And it's kind of like skill 1 is your dot skill, so it applies curse. Skill 2, I think, can heal you. And then skill 3 actually has almighty damage tack to it. And so you can bypass, elemental blocks. Now, I wouldn't say that he is, you put him into a curse null situation because you're not like always applying this great almighty damage. But he does, have that little bit of it going for him. Now, the reason I separated him from these two is because he would pair with Rin. Just like Joker, you've got this curse synergy going on, and she also debuffs. And so definitely not a bad pairing. And if you have her, I would put her in that team. And then, again, go down your buff list. So do you have a Leo, whatever. And then, you're avoiding kind of the sustain. He's got a little bit of a heal. I wouldn't say that it's, better than a true healer. But if you need sustain, do as we said before, pick your favorite healer here. None of them synergize specifically to him. I personally like winded status, and that's why I go with Morgana. But you might love burn and take in that burn damage on the enemy. Absolutely fine. And again, more Cattle's probably easier to heal with at this part of the game than Morgana is without the crits. Or, keep your big buffers if you don't need that. So either way. And I really think that, if you take something else from this guide, it's that Soy is such a good slot in for so many teams. So if you are not doing a lot of pulls right now and you don't have a lot of roster, he is really going to be a go-to a lot of the times. So let's recap. I'll put a timestamp here if you don't want to go through all the individual characters. For a second here, let's forget about the DPS and let's just talk about the kind of order of operations here. Navis, once again, summing it up, Okean offensive, Puppet defensive, That's the play. Choose it for the content that you're in. If you want to go hard, go Okyan. If you need some more survivability, go Puppet. Buff side, I think your, tier order, if you want to call it that, Leo's your best. He's going to give you a lot of attack. He's very easy to build into. And then when you get his 5-star weapon, which is kind of like a priority as your 50-50 consolation prize, if you lose it, don't go chasing it. But if you get to a loss, I would put him in the slots to hopefully get his weapon. Then I would go into Riddle, Tomoko last. And again, even if I'm not telling you to build these people to 80, it doesn't mean you can't build them now. And eventually you want every character at 50 to get the standard banner pulls that they give you for hitting that level. And so still build them. And these two are going to be better now than they are in the future. So if you want to enjoy them, this is your best time to enjoy these two characters, or, really any of these characters. For debuff, Rin is best paired with Curse. So whenever you have a Curse team, which are our two boys here, Joker and I think Sumi was his name, she is going to pair very well with them. When you don't have her, you don't have a ton of debuff options. And I'd really consider actually calling Soy a debuffer for his defense debuff in that situation. And then Key, really I would only use him on a fire team. I don't think he is such a great debuffer or anything of that nature. And it's just that he synergizes so well with On. Personally, if I wasn't using him in a fire team, I probably wouldn't use him at all or build him. Tank-wise, again, Soy, I think you've seen how valuable he is, hopefully, in this video. I would use Soy in every tanking situation as of right now. And our other friend here, she is really there, I think, to help Fox when Fox comes out, as far as teams that we have at that time. Sustain, this one, I could go either way. I think, again, from a pure healing standpoint, right now, Cattle is your easier bet because you don't need to build specifically into crit to make him work. Whereas Morgana, when he's not critting, his heals just don't feel as good. And right now, it's just so hard to build crit. The reason that I like Morgana is that Windswept status, because it's another defense debuff that stacks with other defense debuffs. This one I really think is a personal preference piece. The exception being fire teams. When you run a fire team, he is just synergizing with On. And so again, your fire team of On, Cattle, Key is really fantastic at this stage of the game. And then DPS, I don't really like to put these in an order specifically because, if you have a wind weak situation, Flueret is better than Joker. If you have a ice week, then Mont is better, than Ryuji. And so these are more situational to the content that you're in. But I do think from an early game perspective, two of the most useful, because there's so many AoE fights, like going through palaces and mementos, your Joker and your On are great. I would say that Joker edges out On right now as far as AoE DPS in just broad content. And we're not talking about, resisting an element, just running through a dungeon and you're not being nulled out of your element. I would take him slightly over On, but On is still absolutely fantastic. Do not take that as On is not good and you have to go get Joker. If you don't have Joker, you don't want Joker, she is phenomenal and you can get her for free from the beginner select banner. So fantastic there. And then the rest of these I'm not going to cover. This is just pick it for the content that you're in, whatever makes the most sense. I don't think it's wrong to build any of these, regardless of whether or not you see me build them. I just have already planned out most of my pulls for the rest of the game. And so, or at least up until like 3.0. And so for me, I just, I'm using my future foresight to say I can get by certain things without building them, but I am eventually still going to build most of these characters anyways. So, well, it just will come later. But that's the super fast recap. So hopefully, if you're finding yourself in that situation where you hear me say use this and this, and you're like, well, I don't have that and that this guide will help you to make those choices and kind of prioritize down the list and just take those broader team thoughts of how do I build a team, and see who you have and who you can kind of go down the list on. And then the only other thing to note is you can do a lot with Wonder's personas. I'll probably need to make a different guide for that. But, you can do things like debuff defense, increase crit, increase attack with different personas. You could say never build an ice character and hit weakness with an ice persona. Same with other elements. And so don't forget that Wonder is meant to be, your wild card, as they call him, and you can slot him in to do so many different things. But that's what I think about, how do you prioritize down your teams? I hope this helped. I hope it wasn't done in too confusing of a way. I struggled with how I wanted to list this out and show you. And if you liked it, please leave a like and a sub on the video. It helps us get out to more people and help them as well. Also helps the channel, of course. And with that, my friends, I will see you on the next video, and please take care of yourselves.